Well, 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 look who came crawling back to hear more theories. Yeah, I'm talking to you. This is your what? Fifth? Sixth video? And you still haven't bothered to subscribe. I'm not saying you're any less cool for watching. No. I'm 1000% saying you are less cool for not subscribing after watching my videos. Where do you get off? Like, what kind of nerve must you have to come to youtube.com, click on my video on multiple occasions, and not subscribe? That's like going to the doctor to get medical advice, spitting on the stethoscope, and then slapping him with it. But what you guys don't know is that Dr. Jack's got hands and he ain't afraid to use them. You hear that, non-subscriber? You've got 5 seconds to subscribe, or you'll feel the unbridled rage of the likes you've never witnessed before. A storm of fury. 5, 4, 3, 2. I edited out all the screams, but everyone who didn't sub have been, well, they've been neutralized. What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Jack Oates to go. You either know or you don't. Today is another theory about Asta and or Liabe's cosmic identity. So far, I have about 3 theories on this channel for who they could be. So what I'll be doing is throwing these identity videos in a playlist for their on their own, so you guys can decide which one makes the most sense to you. As far as this theory goes, I wanted to lead in with the fact that I do believe Asta and or Liabe fit this entity that we'll be talking about, but as I've thought about it more, this very well could apply to Yuno as well. But we'll cross that bridge later on in the theory. So without further ado, let's hop right into the craziness. See, a long time ago on this channel, we had talked about the concept of the pleroma and the kenoma. If you missed those videos, definitely go back and watch them, or you may be a bit lost. See, back before there was a universe, there was a place known as the pleroma. This place was also a boundless entity made of light. This entity is known as the invisible God, or the true God, or even the Bythos. Now, I need you guys to imagine a circle. This is him. This is the pleroma. Within that light, he created other light beings that we would identify as angels. However, the most accurate term is aeon. But now I need you guys to envision that circle again, and then put 30 smaller circles within it. These are the 30 aeons created by the invisible God. The closer to the middle it is, the more divine or godlike it is. The invisible God created in pairs, with the concept being masculine and feminine principles. This is not to say that he created men and women specifically, as these beings seem to transcend things like gender, but each of these pairs were able to create as long as they had the invisible God's permission, and they did so as a pair. However, the story that I'll be telling you about today did precisely the opposite. The story starts out on the outermost edges of the pleroma with a divine entity known as Sophia, the youngest of the 30 aeons. Sophia one day decides that she would create, but she did so without God's permission, and moreover, she decided to do this on her own without her counterpart. Sophia then births an entity that was so grotesque it frightened her. It was a massive serpent with a lion's head. So scared of what she had created, Sophia cast her son outside of the pleroma, where he would wonder about who he was and why he was. As he was left alone, he ultimately realized that he was God and created the universe. In some beliefs, it is said that he only created this galaxy, which is a very cool concept. But this entity became known as Yaldabaoth, which of whom is also referred to as Yahweh or the Creator God, and also some other names that we'll go over later on in this video. This next part tends to vary from source to source, but Yaldabaoth does create his own angels. It is said that he does so by imitating the images of the 30 aeons. In some sources, it is explicitly expressed that Yaldabaoth was blind to the presence of the 30 aeons and the invisible God before him, however somehow manages to see the reflection. After seeing that there were beings greater than he was, envy took over. This is when the angels were created. However, these angels were far from what the 30 aeons were supposed to have been perceived as they shared similar frightening traits as he did. The reason I love this explanation of the Gnostic creation story is because it then explains why angels and devils alike look so terrifying. But anyway, from there, even Yaldabaoth's creations turned against him, and here rises the story of the Archons, otherwise simply known as demons. The reason for the revolt is, as we all know, he created humans in his last effort to mimic something more divine, as he had received a glimpse of the invisible god. In the most ironic twist of fate, Yaldabaoth's creations turned against him as he had ultimately turned against the will of the invisible god. So to keep the Archons at bay, Yaldabaoth created Earth. This was in an effort to trap their souls within flesh, bone, and blood. Here's another part that seems to vary from source to source. In the conception of humans, it seems as though Yaldabaoth used the remaining sparks of divine light he had stolen from his mother Sophia, so the bodies of Adam and Eve respectively laid on the ground lifeless. It was then when the invisible God reached out and provided the bodies with the spark of divine life. The invisible God does this in an effort to save the humans from the hell of matter, as once they are freed from their bodies, they may intuitively understand that the creator god Yaldabaoth is a false god, and that their true abode is within the Pleroma. In another source, Yaldabaoth gave up his highest power to breathe soul into man. It was then his mother Sophia instilled in him the divine spark of spirit, in which Yaldabaoth uses to create a snake spirit that became known as the original source of evil, known as Ophiomorphos. It is not explicitly stated, but I feel as though Sophia tried giving Yaldabaoth a second chance to do the right thing by instilling that divine spark within him again. However, it seems as though Yaldabaoth's natural state is evil. Seeing that Yaldabaoth had no intention of doing the right thing, Sophia uses that snake spirit and causes the fall of man, but it is here that the fall of man was actually the first step into spiritual liberation, back to the Pleroma. This is the story that we all have come to know very well. The snake that most of us were taught in the Garden of Eden to have been Satan, Lilith, or Beelzebub was actually not a demonic entity by any means, but instead the creator god's own mother trying to free the humans from the illusion of matter and reality outside of the Pleroma. There is, of course, much more to this lore, but let's just start connecting pieces together. One of the most important aspects of anything in Black Clover and in mythos in general is etymology, which is the meaning of a name. Yaldabaoth is meant to literally mean son of chaos, as that is the space in which he was born and rose out of. We have gone over chaos as a force and entity, so definitely watch those videos to fully understand. But we should know that chaos and Satan are pretty much synonymous in that it is the birthplace and deathplace of literally all things in physical existence. Yaldabaoth also has two other names, one being Saklas, which means fool, and the other being Samael, which has come to be known as poison or blind one. All three names are synonymous with Lucifer. In my video explaining the operations of the Sephiroth and Qliphoth, the three veils above both trees do ultimately connect and form a circle of perfect balance between light and darkness. However, these mystics believe the creator god Yaldabaoth to be an evil god and mostly lies in the underworld torturing souls with the other Archons. The angels in the light tree are not aware of his evil nature and serve him ignorantly. In this lore, it is said that the invisible god catches on to Yaldabaoth and essentially smites him. From this, Yaldabaoth is separated into two, one good and one evil. But it is said that he gave up all of his power to create humans, which means he is now then powerless. This sounds much like Asta and Liebe, as they both have no mana. The best part about this is that Lucida fits the role of Sophia very well with the information that we have. We have no known father for Asta, and there could be several reasons for this, as explained in, I think, 3 other videos. I do, however, want to note that Yaldabaoth steals the divine spark meant to give life from his mother, Sophia. So let's say Lucida has a similar attribute. Maybe she can animate things, give things life. But Asta, being Yaldabaoth in this case, steals that from her, and the resulting side effects become as we've experienced in the series. Lucida now steals life and mana from anything she's close to. Remember that Sophia was afraid of her creation, and maybe Lucida was as well. It's just me speculating. Then we have Liebe, who's a devil child, who Lucida ultimately decides to take on as her son. She takes it upon herself to redeem her past action of leaving Asta at the church by protecting and caring for Liebe, despite him being a devil. But if this is the evil half of Yaldabaoth, it would make sense that she would try to nurture him and treat him well so that he grows up and uses his power for good. Now back to Asta, I do envision having some type of soul attribute, as I did explain in my King of Angels videos and another video. So should it awaken in him, it still falls in line with this lore, since Yaldabaoth stole that divine spark from Sophia, as Asta would have stolen it from Lucida in this case. I think it's important to note that Lucida's name does mean light, and that light is frequently featured as the source of that divine spark known to give life. Switching back to Liebe, it seems like an obvious connection to make, as anti-magic seems to reflect the destructive aspect of chaos as a force almost perfectly, where Asta would there then have the creative forces of chaos should his powers be awakened. I want to use this last part of the video to present another depiction of Yaldabaoth, as well as put Yuno as a potential parallel to Yaldabaoth. So one depiction of Yaldabaoth that I did come across includes the fact that he is a god-eater. It's said that other pantheons existed before a current one after Yaldabaoth lost his power, but Yaldabaoth had a plan to regain supremacy, and that plan was to wait for each pantheon's apocalypse and then eat the gods of that pantheon while they were weakened. As he did this, it gave rise to new pantheons, and he would repeat the cycle until he reigned the most supreme, but still below the 30 aeons invisible god, and birthed the pantheon we are familiar with today. Anti-magic eats mana, which could be a product of some type of divinity, and as we discussed, whether that divinity is good in nature or evil, we don't quite know yet. But there is another character that I feel does fit this bill quite well, and of course that character is Yuno. Yuno, as we know, does have some very strong connections to Lucifer, as stated in countless other videos, but we also must consider that he currently has 3 forms, of which are named after gods of wind, with a possible 4th being Notice soon on its way. Yuno is also loved by mana, but not like we've seen. He's loved by mana in the most aggressive of ways, where he consumes the mana around him to the point of completely disrupting spells, as if devouring it for his own benefit. Yuno would be a suitable fit for Yaldabaoth. The most damning thing about this is an illustrated depiction of Yaldabaoth. The depictions of him include a sun and a moon on either side of the lion-headed serpent, and on Yaldabaoth's head, a star crown. This might seem as a completely different theory from the others, however, it is just more specific and can still be applied to all the other theories on this channel, as Yaldabaoth is not only equated to God, but is also equated to Satan. I now want to leave this video off on the wildest note ever. What if Asta is Yaldabaoth, and he simply does not remember who he was prior to ascent, and same with Liebe, and into the earthly realm, at some point comes to remember who he was, and we get a shift in character, much like we do with Eren Yeager in Attack on Titan, if you're familiar with the series. It would cause a huge shift in dynamics of the story and other interpersonal relationships Asta has with the characters within the series. This also gives us a much more dynamic story as far as the angels and devils go. Remember, Yaldabaoth's first batch of angels turned on him, so the devils of the Qliphoth would ultimately know who he is and that he is not good, while the angels would serve him yet have no idea that he's acting as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Asta, in the endgame, would be the ultimate enemy here. The same could be said about Yuno. Now, I know this was a lot of information, so this may take more than one listen to fully grasp, as it took me several read-throughs to understand myself. Everything aside, I appreciate all your continued support, especially if you made it all the way to the end. And if you happen to have made it all the way here, do me a favor and leave a hashtag with your comment. Leave the hashtag YDB, and if you happen to have notifications on for my channel, let me know by also putting a hashtag notification gang with your comment. Other than that, I want to thank you guys again, and I will see you all in the next video. This has been Jack Oates to Go. You either know or you don't.